Welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels, a Star Wars Legion podcast bringing you the latest news, general perspective, and competitive discussion.
Hello and welcome back to the Notorious Scoundrels podcast. I'm Kyle. I'm here with Jay and Tim Hannon. What's up, gentlemen?
Hello.
Hey, everybody. It's me, Jay.
Such a stellar intro right there.
I don't feel like you ever have that, like, your mind or your soul or whatever you want to call it just doesn't feel like it's part of your body, and you're just like, I don't know why I'm doing this right now. That's where I'm at right now. So,
all right.
I don't know why. Nothing bad. Nothing. Just body and mind not connecting today, and just going.
I feel that.
You guys will appreciate this, everyone at home. For those of you watching YouTube, if you guys could see my hands, you see all this black all over my hands. So I was priming I'm doing some terrain pieces for Adepticon, and I was priming, and the black can of spray paint blew up in my hand, and I got paint everywhere. My hands were pure black. It was
exploded, like
the top. Not like the can didn't like combust, but like the top exploded.
Like the little sprayer piece.
Yeah, and it just went this. It just went like everywhere, and it got like all over my clothes I was wearing, all over. Luckily, it was primer, so I was priming
my raccoon wounds.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. So, and it just went. My job went a little bit quicker, but oh my god, yeah, I got paint all over. Like I can't get it off of my hands. Like my hands were black. Oh man, it was wild. So that's the kind of day I'm having. That's why maybe I'm separated from myself.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I feel like that always happens to me, just the mental piece on a holiday Monday when we record, because it kind of feels like we're recording on a Sunday, and I'm like, wait, in my head, we're not supposed to be doing this yet.
Holiday for some people. Some of us still have to go in the office, all right? So.
Okay. Well, I work for the government, so...
Yes. Well, yeah.
Yes, it was a nice holiday.
I keep forgetting that I don't work for the state anymore, because my old job I worked for a state school, and this is not a state school. So now
there you go.
A lot of time I think I have a holiday, and like, no, you still got to be here. Oh, okay, surprise.
Yep. That is unfortunate, but I guess it's like a regular Monday for you. So you're in the zone today, whereas,
no, everything was popping off today. It was a rough Monday. Like I was telling Jay, we were like losing our mind by lunchtime. We were gone as a team.
Well, at least, I mean, if you're going to all do it together, right?
Yes, exactly. It was good team bonding, like a team mental breakdown.
Yep.
Yes. Kyle, keep digging for the positives.
There you go. Hey, I had both my kids learned to ride a bike today.
Wow.
So
super dad over
kids,
here.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah, they're 2 years apart. My daughter is 6. My son is 4. And my son is like, he actually figured it out first. And because he's very like gung-ho on the physical skills. And he's like, this morning, he was just like, Dad, can you take my training wheels off? And I was like, yes.
Sure. Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
So I did. And then he just goes. And I'm like, okay. Excuse me. So then my daughter, who's 6, and is focused, zero energy on this effort whatsoever. I mean, she has a bike, right? But she looks at him doing it, and she's like, wait a minute. Like, he's 2 years younger than me.
Right.
Like, I can't do that. So she figured it out eventually. But, yeah. So same day.
That's
getting his kids ready to play in Blizzard Force already. Blizzard Force, bikes.
I will say that is... enjoy that, Kyle, because that is one of those key moments in life that you always remember, is when your kids are riding their bikes. I don't know why. It's just one of those ingrained parent things,
It's such a cliche dad moment when like the kid gets up on the bike and you've got like the hand on the back and you're like pushing them, and then they're like, look at me, and you're like, yes, this is like from a movie, like right now, what's happening?
Yeah.
You're doing it, Peter. You're doing it.
Right. Exactly. Anyway, speaking of in the zone, a transition which I had mentally prepared like 5 minutes ago and has now passed. We're going to talk about deployment today.
Right.
We're going to talk about Legion. But
crap.
first,
that's what we're doing. I
yeah,
forgot we were recording. There you go.
Crap.
Yeah. Luckily, the Zoom now gives you a very audible, obvious message when you start recording. So
Yeah, but that was like 5 minutes ago.
I know.
Forgot already.
Yeah.
That's not how my brain works.
You got any housekeeping for us, Jay, before we get to that?
Yeah, I got a bunch. So first off, let's talk about, I don't know if you guys have seen, but I know Tim has. Every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Evan and I go live with our Fifth Tile podcast, which is a podcast about all sorts of gaming. We talk a little bit about Legion, but I yell at Evan every time he brings Legion up because it's really meant for other things, to talk about other games and introduce other games. And but you guys can catch us live on our YouTube or our Twitch channels every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then we release the audio version the next day. And you can catch all the video playbacks on both those channels. So that's the first thing. Come hang out with us live, ask us questions in chat, bring up games that we should try to play, etc., etc. Next thing is red and blue sidebars are back in stock for pre-order. So I know it's been a long time for those of you wanting them. We're getting them back in. So hopefully by the end of March they should be in, ideally. But you can pre-order them now. So we're gonna have a limited quantity. So make sure you get your pre-order in. The next thing is February's edition of One Shots, our Legion magazine, should be hitting people's mailboxes tomorrow. So One Shots is officially out for February, and we are diligently working on the March issue and tying that up here shortly. So very exciting about that. So if you haven't gotten a chance, you can back order the March and February one, and then you can sign up for the subscription, which will just ship them out every month to you, or you could just buy them singly. We put them up all individually as well for sale. So, and you get all kinds of cool stuff. Like the first one, we did some new deployment and objectives and stuff. The second one, we came up with a new game mode called Heroes of the Galaxy, which is a hero focused, like grid based game that borrows the rules of Legion. So that was in the February one. And then in this March one, I'm gonna put in some skirmish battlefield cards, and we're gonna have a little story to go along with that, plus all our interviews and everything else that we do. So I feel like there was something else, but I don't remember. So Patreon, support us on patreon.com/the Fifth Trooper.
Yep,
there it is.
I think yeah.
All right, awesome.
Yeah,
we did it. There, housekeeping.
All right, should we get in the zone?
there it is. Yes,
the auto zone.
The great place, by the way.
Yeah.
We are not sponsored by AutoZone. We're not going to go on a Wegman style tangent.
Not yet. The zone is the limit. Hey.
All right. So I think we can do this kind of in two parts. The first is to, I guess, really 3 parts. I did that partially just to see that reaction right there. The first is just how to decide what to include when you're making a battle deck, which deployments you want to put in there.
True.
The second is when you're going through like the turn 0 veto process, what considerations you should be thinking of when you're trying to think of deployments. And then the third is just when you're actually like dropping units, what to think about.
Yeah.
So
all right.
First, I think this is going to be the easiest one. How to decide what deployments to include in your deck. How do you guys approach this process?
My way might be a little crazy, so I'll give it to you just because I have
my shock face.
Yeah, well, because normally I have a weird list, usually with double heavies, right? And so generally, how it ends up working for me is my first 2 choices are ones I know will work for me, like that are all me. So like for instance, if I'm running, double heavies rollout is clearly one of my first choices, and then my second one specifically with double ATST is I do what is it, Hemden. That's my second one. as blue player with double ATSTs, you put them in that little like one zone at the top, what range one zone, and you just put both your double ATSTs there, and it's like no matter what we're playing, they're gonna kill a bunch of stuff. And then what I do from there is, because I feel like there's always two that are very good with your army, then the next two are kind of generally okay for everyone, and you just try to think what's going to be worse for your opponent than it would be for you by picking one of these. Like if I'm running a double heavy list, I don't take advanced positions because that's silly, right? But all the other ones are like, I don't know, they're like 50-50 for me. So I just try to go, okay, like major offensive, it would probably be pretty good for me because I can put the ATSTs in the panhandle and kind of control the center of the board, and would be bad for somebody that doesn't have double. Disarray would be really bad for me, so I just try to pick the ones that I feel like are going to be a little bit worse for my opponent, even if they're just okay for me.
I've not seen you play your double heavies or nor played against you. Because I was thinking actually the disarray might be good with the double ATSD, but I guess I don't know how do you like to like keep them all together so you can give them orders and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. That makes sense. I've seen
Yeah.
it both ways. I've seen them together, and then also I've seen them like just completely independent. So I just don't know.
Barring any like hard changes in the game, the goal with my double heavy list is that the first 4 rounds, both the ATSTs have orders, plus you'll have like an additional order for 2 of those rounds. But that's how I play it, because
That's fair.
yeah, like it's just the way to do it. For me anyways, and disarray kind of like disengages that, because I find I know we're talking about deployment, but here's a little for double heavies. I find that if they both have actions from the beginning, that it puts a little hesitation in people, and to do, because they know that I can act at any moment, right? And then also it just gives me way more options. Like even if it's a move standby, right? You can't knock standbys off of vehicles. So with one of them, I have a move standby. So now they're kind of like sentrying being a sentry for this like area. And then I have the second one to kind of back them up if my opponent can get around that standby. But yeah, anyways, I like having orders. So disarray's a no go for me.
Sure. No, that makes sense. Like I said, I've seen it both ways. So I just didn't know how you played it. Yeah. Fair enough.
Sorry, long way around, but
no, that's good. That's good stuff.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I think for me, I go all over the board as far as what lists I'm playing. So I don't have anything I've really not locked down. But I think really for a lot of the games I've been playing recently, it's funny we're talking about this because it hit me just the last time I was building a list and like building my battle deck. I was like, my battle deck hasn't changed in so long, at least on the deployment side. It's major, AP, rollout, and then long march. And I always keep rollout in there, even if I don't play vehicles, for 2 reasons. A, there's that extra little nub that goes a little bit farther out than your traditional like long march. And B, using that, sometimes an opponent will get greedy. So if I'm playing against vehicles, I'll actually, depending on the vehicle, sometimes I'll actually push for rollout, because not everyone, but a lot of folks that I've played will take the bait almost of saying, look, I'm going to put my heavy out here. I'm going to use this extra range to move it. But then in turn, that's now moving him closer to my stuff, which normally if I'm doing that, if that's my game plan, I probably have some kind of anti-armor in there. So it's kind of like, I'm okay with no one doing rollout. I'm also okay with the opponent doing rollout if I can't. So I like it. Long march, I try to avoid, but it's like the lesser of all the evils for me.
So you, even like when you run dewbacks and stuff, you do those deployments?
So dewbacks, little bit different. I think sometimes I've learned that I don't like long marches much because they tend to die on the long march approach. Again, rollout, because that little extra nub, it's okay most of the time. Okay. Yeah, the do backlist kind of changes it up a little bit. My problem is I don't like how annoying Danger Close is, but a lot of times with Dewback, I will play Danger Close because it's really good with Dewbacks. Yeah, it's really good. It's really good with Dewbacks.
Yeah.
I don't do Hemmed In. I don't touch Disarray. I couldn't tell you the last time I had Disarray in my deck.
Now, is that because you just like don't want to bother with the zones, or because you don't think it fits what it is that you're
Both.
trying to do? Both.
Both.
Okay.
As someone who primarily, I mean, pretty much every list I play more or less wants to stay together, whether that's Republic, Empire, droids, of course, because you want to get the order chain going. Pretty much everything I play wants to stay together. So I don't like Disarray because it forces you to throw it over there. Obviously, if you're using your battle deck, you don't have to care about playing as red player on Hemmed In. But I actually don't hate it on Hemmed In as much if I am red player because you don't have to put units over there. You have a little bit more freedom to do whatever you want to. Yeah. My main four don't tend to change a whole lot. Normally Long March is the one that gets cut. If I cut something and change it, it's Long March. Because again, if you don't have anything for that, especially the opening like couple of turns, the opening salvos, if you don't have anything and you're facing a gun line, you're just going to get blown off the board before you get there.
Is that why you don't take Hemmed In either?
Yeah, kind of. Similar kind of vein. I'm also always afraid that if I face a army, whether that's Blizzard or something else that is more mobile than I am, even if I'm blue player and I'm in the middle with Hemmed In, I'm afraid I'm going to get pinched, whatever you want to call it.
Afraid you're going to get Hemmed In.
Yes, exactly. Haha. Yeah, I said this when it first came out, and I still maintain this. I don't think Hemmed In is that bad for a red player. If anything, I think there's been times when Hemmed In is actually way better for a red player. Not every game, but it can be.
I have a slightly different take on Hemmed In.
That's fair. You're better than I am, so I respect your opinion more than my own. So go for it.
Don't suck up to him.
Yeah. You don't get extra.
I'm more acknowledging my shortcomings, but that's fine.
Anyway, so I think of deployments really in three buckets now with the new rules. There's the short edge to short edge. So, you've got your 6x3, right? So that would be if you're going from the 3-foot edge to the 3-foot edge. So like Long March is the token, short edge to short edge deployment. But I would say that also includes rollout. And then also essentially the diagonal deployment, so advanced positions and major offensive. So that's 4 different deployments. And then you've got the long edge to long edge deployments, which is battle lines, disarray, danger close, and then officially Hemmed In is also that.
I completely forgot the battle lines existed. Sorry. Carry on. Yeah.
No worries. And those are ones where you're going, basically from the 6-foot edge to the 6-foot edge. If I have mobile units like speeders, aggro units, which is sometimes the same thing, but not always, or dark troopers, which I guess is probably aggro units if I had to categorize them somewhere. If I have one of those 3 things, then I go the long edge to long edge. If I don't, then I go short edge to short edge chunk of deployments. And then now I basically always include Hemmed In regardless of which of those 2 it is. And my reasons essentially are there are 2 reasons that I used to like not include Hemmed In sometimes. The first is that tables are usually set up to the extent that they're set up with some kind of intention by TOs, which I know is not a given. But if they are, they tend to be set up with like that diagonal axis, whether they do it consciously or not. But you kind of look at that like
it's like almost mirrored diagonally,
right?
Kind of. Yeah.
Which can mean that blue zone often, especially since red gets to pick table side, that blue zone can often have like some really strange / open areas in it. I think that's less of an issue now since you can essentially hide like 3 units behind a barricade. Um, I haven't found like I run hemmed in with Blizzard, and I have not found any difficulty getting stuff cover basically. Whereas usually
That's
there's
fair.
you can have awkward angles and stuff with that blue hemmed in zone. Um, and then the second reason that it used to make me hesitate to take it is if you were playing a defensive list, or really anything that's not like a mobile aggro list, you were probably running VAPs. And if you're running VAPs, Hendon is a lot less good for VAPs. So it can make that kind of like an awkward, well, I could force VAPs, but then my opponent could force Hendon, and then that's not how I want to play VAPs.
Yeah, for sure.
But now you're just not playing VAPs. So that's less of a concern for me.
Right.
So I would say I always now include hemmed in, because it puts blue so close to the center, which is where most objectives are. So yeah.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I also, as you're talking, I was thinking back to games I've played on Hemden, and I think I can genuinely say this. I think I've never won a game on Hemden. So I've probably have some like bias against it where I just go like, no, I always lose on it. So I just don't want to play blue, red doesn't matter. Just always lose for me. So there's probably some like negative stigma back there that I just don't like it.
That's
some could
fine.
say that means I need to just get good, but I ignore that advice. And battle lines too, just to speak to battle lines, because I forgot it existed. I play battle lines and I don't really run this kind of list, but if I were to run some kind of list with R2, like trying to make a break for it, like just making a beeline from one side of the map to the other, then I'll play battle lines. And I've lost to that before, to be fair. Which is a lot of times why I don't play that, because I've seen it to where my whole army is over here, and then they go, okay, well, I'm just going to put R2 over here, and you can't stop them, and I win. And I don't like that. So
yeah, that's fair. I think that's less of an issue now, simply because R2 is less common with all the bounty hunters and speeder bikes everywhere.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and a lot of the bounty hunters are so mobile too that they can get over to him and get a clear shot on him pretty easily now.
Yeah, I think bringing R2 right now is not that I wouldn't do it. I think there are some clone lists where you can kind of like sub in R2 3PO for Padme for 20 points less if you're just viewing it as a token generation situation with like bonus, maybe it scores secret mission. Who knows?
Right.
Like the R2 3PO role now is really not that much different from Padme.
Yeah.
So I can see that now, but yeah, I think R2
in a land speeder is always good too, because it's just so mobile. It just gets across there so fast.
Well, and you put him with Shriv, and then he basically can't be shot. So
right,
who knows how many bounty hunters or speeder bikes your opponent has? Like if they can't legally target him until the land speeder dies.
Right. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
But no, I hear you.
So yeah, that's me. I don't know.
That is you, Kyle. That sounds just like you.
Yeah.
It makes sense. It's a good rationale.
All right. Should we talk about things to watch out for when you're going through the veto process with deployments?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. What do you guys think about when you're doing that?
Watch out for vetoes. That's what I'm thinking about.
Great advice, Jay. Thank you for that. That's great. That's excellent.
Yeah, I think there's two sides to that. I think there's what you're looking at as blue player when it's your deck, and what you're looking at as red player when it's not your deck, right? And I think I'll start with red player. For me, it's mostly like first glance is, okay, how many of these are in my deck? Let's start there, right? And if they're in my deck, then I'm a little less concerned about the deployment zones, I'm more concerned about objective and conditions, right? But if there's a couple that are not in my deck, I take a look and I go, oh yeah, no, that one's real bad for me. So what position is that in? And then I try to avoid that one, for the most part. Pretty simple.
Yeah, and I think to piggyback off of that too, if it's in your deck, like you said, if I'm red player and we're using your deck, if it's in there, it's a double-edged sword because it's goes, okay, I don't have to worry about it as much, but also that means you have some kind of rationale for it to being in your deck. So now I really have to pay attention to the other things going on, which I guess is a bigger turn zero discussion, really. But yeah. And I think also, not for nothing, it also comes down to how your board looks, how your map looks. Because you could have something that on paper works great for your list, and then when you put it on the table, you go, "Oh no, this would be awful." We can talk about an example of that after Kyle gives his 2 cents, but I do have an example.
Yeah, I mean, there's one sort of hard and fast rule that I try and follow when going through vetoes with deployments, and that's if you're red player, you should never let payload and hemmed in be a combination that exists. Because playing red player on payload is like,
oh, it's awful.
Yeah, it's I don't want to say it's like an auto loss, but it's probably about the closest thing you can get.
Red player on payload. Yeah.
Now I will say that now that it like doesn't fly.
Yeah.
If you get a table that has like a big wall or something on one side, and you can,
I was gonna say that was my hesitation, is you can kind of control a little bit better of how it's gonna go.
Yeah, I mean, you're still, as red player, you're still probably in a situation where you're not going to be able to score your payload, but now you might be able to like use the table to also prevent blue player from doing that, even on hemmed in. I've definitely seen plenty of tables that have these big long walls across certain sections of them, and if they have one of those as red player, you can probably just pick a spot that's on the other side of that, and then blue player can't score either. So that might be an exception to that rule, but
no, that makes sense. That makes sense. I think it matters a lot more too with the new payload rules and moving how it does in those maps that are more urban kind of setting. Because it used to be like, oh, these are cool thematic things, but the car's still just going to go in a straight line. And now it's like, okay, now it's actually going to follow the streets and things like that. So yeah, if there's one side that has some more advantageous streets or whatever, yeah, could be a big difference.
And payload can come down to the difference of like half an inch sometimes. So even like a slight deviation can be pretty costly.
Yeah, for sure.
Payload aside, I think it's really important to like still look at the location of the line of sight blockers and then terrain, especially because there are some deployments, specifically hemmed in and disarray, where even if you picked a certain side as red player, they can kind of like flip the table advantage on their head. Danger close also. In that like you kind of end up deploying on your opponent's side of the table, or at least in a part of the table that maybe you didn't consider whether it's you picking the table side as red or the other guy. Right. One of you didn't consider. It's important to be like, maybe you can kind of flip it around. But also just looking at the location of the blockers relative to where you're both going to set up.
Yeah.
And also objectives. It's important to look at where the objectives are going to end up if you pick, whatever objective it is that you're trying to go for.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
Do you have an anecdote about this, Tim?
I do. What a fun, not totally pre-planned thing you've led into. Years ago, in what was probably an RPQ or Prime, whatever they used to be called in Knoxville, I played against the wonderful Chris Beezer, who's a very good player. And we played, I forget, and again, this is many years ago now, so my memory's a little bit rusty, but I think it was Long March. We played KP Long March, and we didn't realize it was a good board, like it was a Felucia kind of board for those that have seen it. And we got all that done. We start dropping or getting ready to drop units. So like, okay, we got to declare KPs. And then we realized, and it was already too late, we already moved on, that he had no viable, like no legally discernible objectives for KP. So literally, I had a KP and there was the middle KP, and that was it. So he was automatically starting losing.
Wait, so there were only 2 on the table?
There were only 2 on the table.
Is that how you're like supposed to resolve that situation?
if that happens, I think so. Or I'm sorry, maybe if there was a third one, it might have been like right next to me. In some way, shape, or form, I had all of them. Oh,
Okay.
and the middle, and there's the middle too. I think there was only two, but again, maybe there was like a bush or a shrub or something that we said was still a third KP. But yeah, basically, he had nothing on his whole side, and it was not an auto loss. It was still actually, I remember that game being very close because it's a Palp game. I think I was playing Palp, or he might have been playing Palp. It was very close, as with any game with Palp and KP can be, because he was diving and doing Palp bomb things. But long story short, the important lesson here is pay attention to what's going to be legal, what's going to be a KP or a VAT position or anything like that. And then think too, to that point, especially if you're a red player, be aware of like where your VAT placements are going to go. And then also as blue player, like, okay, if I'm blue player, I'm going to get the last, I'm sorry, not the last placement, red player is going to get the last VAT placement. I want to make sure I'm not going to get boxed out, because that's happened to me before, where one, and then like, oh no, now I have nowhere good to place this VAP. And it can really be devastating.
For sure. Yeah, and with, if we start seeing scatter terrain kind of disappear as a result of the new cover rules, I could see situations like you described with that KP weirdness getting slightly more common, just because you're going to have, if we're trending towards like fewer terrain that is more uniformly shaped and maybe a little bit larger, kind of like 40K style, you're going to run into more situations where you go to KP and there are very few options that you can actually pick that are not in your zones or within range one of the center.
I will say a slight tweak to that we discussed this after that game. I remember for that map, at least for the Felucia map, and if you've ever seen it, again, it's one of the older maps, because it was early days of Legion. The easy solution for that would be just to literally physically chop up some of that terrain and break up the big pieces into multiple pieces. But yeah, it's a really big deal.
And don't forget, now you can explicitly, I mean, this is always done anyway, but you can explicitly subdivide terrain pieces when discussing terrain. So
yes, including stairs. Stairs are important to denote.
Yes.
And walkways and things like that. So that way your bases can like overlap on a staircase or something like that.
Yep.
Or not overlap, overhang, excuse me.
Yeah, it's important to look at angles too. For example, I can think of a game at Nova Open I had where or no, I'm sorry, it wasn't Nova Open. It was a practice tournament at Nova Open. But basically, like for whatever reason, all of the blockers on the table were set up such that like they blocked line of sight great from long edge to long edge, but not from short edge to short edge. They blocked it great diagonally, and they blocked it great from long to long, but not from short to short.
Yeah.
And I was playing Iden Boba, which meant that I had, 4 snipers basically.
Yeah.
And I was red. And Long March dropped in the third slot. And I was like, all right, I guess I know what I'm doing here.
Right.
Because I wanted to play short to short, because that was like the direction that line of sight was essentially not blocked.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, I'm going to drop my 4 snipers. I'm going to play short edge to short edge. Let's play Long March. That was like the thing that I focused on turn 0. I double vetoed to it.
And I think that leads to a good point where if you're, and this is really important for like local TOs, or if you're trying to start like a local scene, when you're making maps, whether it's for a tournament or just for casual play even, really, I think the big thing to me is have deployment cards in front of you, like just possible deployment cards. And you can't plan for everything perfectly, but I think Long March, or those, like you said, the short edge kind of deployments, like try and figure out, like, if I'm going from here to here, from this way to this way, do I just suddenly now have a clear open shot? Because I've played on too many boards that, like you said, they're perfect if I'm playing like battle lines or something like that, if we're just running at each other. But as soon as you flip it, now all of a sudden we have this clear open fire lanes that just have nothing. So it's a lot of times when I make a map, I will purposely throw a blocker like right in the middle, on the bottom or on the top, just to try and block that sight line. So that if we do go those board edges, that it's not just a crapshoot. What do you think, Jay?
Excuse me. Sorry.
Tell us your wisdom,
Yes.
Jay.
Tell us your wisdom, Jay. Excuse
You
me.
look very studious.
Did you unmute to cough?
I'm glad that's what you took away from
I've
this.
been muting the cough, Jay.
Yeah.
I was about to talk and then I had to mute myself again. So please talk for a second. I need to.
Yeah.
I need
Yeah,
to
That's why I was trying
getting over a
to
cold.
tag Jay in, and Jay had to call you out on that.
No. I'm in no mood to be a professional.
I'm still getting over some kind of horrible plague. So
Sure.
please continue talking.
Yeah, I will. I'll start, I guess. So yeah, like fire lanes, those are so important, I think, especially now. You like that, Tim?
It's so bad. Yeah, fire lanes. Those
They're
are a thing. Yeah.
All right. So,
great.
anyways, I guess before I always looked for them before, but now with the way the terrain rules are, right? Like finding those, like, when you're looking at the deployment and you're looking to put in units that can pack a punch, like how can I not keep them in this fire lane, but how can I pop them into it so that I could catch someone else in the same fire lane?
Well, and it's important to note too that, like, no matter how you make your board, no matter what happens, and again, unless you make good maps, it's just too dense.
Yeah,
you're always going to have some kind of fire lane. That's just going to happen.
Yeah.
But the point is that's by design and not by flaw.
Right.
Because again, sometimes when you play Long March, all of a sudden you realize a flaw in the map making, and you can go, whoops. So yeah, again, it doesn't have to be all over the place, but just one or two LOS blockers on either side, top or bottom, whatever you want to look at it from, can make all the difference in the game, as well as some scatter. But Kyle was saying, like, maybe there's less scatter around these days. So
yeah, and I think you're always gonna, it's just the larger the event gets, the harder it is for every board to be like a good, good board. And so I think finding those mistakes and finding which side and which deployment is actually going to benefit you the most with those mistakes. Like, for instance, I played, was it PAX? Yeah, I played, Nova, when I played John, and he had Yoda Wookiees, and he's like, John's a very studious man when it comes to playing, right? And he's like measuring everything and and I'm just like, come on, man, let's go, I want to play, and he found the board that we were on, and we've talked about it on the cast before, but it had this like oval line of sight blocker that was about height 1, and he could literally get his whole army behind it and still be within range 1 of the middle objective. And and it was just, I think when we played Intercept, and so it was just like watching out for that stuff. And like John just not immediately, like he measured and he studied the board and he looked at it, but he like saw that and he was like, well, before we even knew what the objectives were, he's like, well, if I can get anything and get behind this, and if we get Intercept, or KP, right? Because he could get Yoda and the Wookiees over it, and now climbing is not as important as it was, but
and I think I'm not really big on practicing anything at home. Like, if I'm going to practice, I'm going to go to a local store and get a full game in. But I think something that you can look at home on assuming you have the right size table for it, is measuring out deployments and where markers going to have place. And like, that's something that's pretty easy to do. You don't have to even set up terrain, really. Like, you're just measuring deployments and objectives. And if I play Long March, this is where this is going to go, this is where this is going to go, or this is where I want this. And again, obviously that's doing it in a vacuum, so everything has to be taken with a grain of salt, but it gets you, I think, in the right mode. And especially if you're looking at going to a tournament, maybe even for the first time, that's a really good way to practice that, so you don't have to have like analysis paralysis where you're staring at it and go like, I don't know, where do I put my VAP? Now you should know, at least in theory, where you want to put your VAP. And again, it's going to change in real life, but it's good practice.
Yeah, and just, know where the center of the table is. like measure it out before you do go through your veto process.
Right. Exactly.
So you know if you're
Exactly.
going to end up playing KP, what
Yeah.
what KP is.
Right.
Intercept, like you said, Jay, in your example, if you're going to end up playing recover, where that box is going to end up being. So, like, just some mats have it like pre-marked, essentially. Yeah,
Our
I was just
mats,
gonna say,
like the Fifth Trooper ones.
There you go.
which
There it
are
is.
all
That's
out
the
of
plug.
stock, but sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you're not playing on one of those, measure it out. Like, there's nothing wrong with before
Right.
you go through the veto process being like, let's figure out where the center of the table is.
Yeah.
It's
That's
totally normal
step
thing
one.
to do. Yeah.
Yeah. That's step one.
Don't wait until you end up picking something where the center matters. Like, know where it is
Yeah.
before you do that. So
I had a really interesting. This is actually the first time it ever happened to me. It was at LVO, this most recent LVO, where it didn't come up, thank God. But before we did anything, before we flipped cards, or maybe we might have flipped battle cards first, but then before any vetoes or anything happened, we looked at where the middle KP was and everything, and basically it was either this huge piece with KP, which would have been bad for everyone involved, or it was like one of these three statues, and they were all perfectly. It's like the Sith temple, and so they were all perfectly the same distance from the middle, and so we literally were just like, we're just gonna roll for it. So it was like 1, 2, 3 or whatever, and we just we rolled it and figured out which was which. Again, it didn't matter. We didn't play KP, but stuff like that's super important.
Yeah, for sure. All right, should we get into like when you're dropping units, what to think about?
Yeah,
For sure.
let's do it, Kyle.
All right.
What are you waiting for? Quit teasing us.
All right. So the most basic thing I think to do, even if you just set aside the unit location for a second, is drop stuff from. There's kind of like two separate orders which interact. The first is drop stuff from most obvious location to least obvious / most variable location.
Yeah.
So, for example, like your core units that need to do objectives, right? Like if you got to pick up a box or something, and both you and your opponent know that you have to pick up that box, and you have like a naked core unit or some other core unit whose obvious job it is going to be to pick up that box, put them next to the box.
Yeah,
Like,
gonna go
do
tap
that
that back VAP or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Do that first. Like,
Yep.
you know it's going there. Your opponent knows it's going there. Just put it down.
Mhm.
And the second is generally like from least important to most important, because you want to hide as much information from your opponent as possible. So
Right.
if you're dropping those, sniper strike teams, those mortars, those naked core units, those normal core units, whatever, you're going to want to drop those earlier because they matter less. So it's
Right.
less of a big deal to like reveal to your opponent where they're going to be.
Yeah.
So those are kind of the two rules I follow in terms of order of dropping stuff.
Yeah, and for
think-
me, and I think any list, depending on your list, right? If you're playing something
Yeah.
like what I play with a double heavy, I don't hide anything. It's like because
I was
I
gonna
think
say,
there's there's somewhere you
it's the
force
other
your
side of it.
opponent to fight on your terms, and you go, no,
Sure.
here's where they are. Deal with
Well,
it.
and not for nothing too, especially with a double heavy, but even with a single heavy,
Yeah.
and maybe even more so sometimes with a single heavy unit. If you know, like again, ATSC is going to guard the middle, we're not shocked by that sometimes. And again, if you have a different game plan, you do you. But if that's your game plan and that's probably what your opponent thinks you're going to do, I don't hate always dropping that somewhat early. Maybe not first, but early, because if you don't have experience putting that down in a small deployment area with troopers next to it, you could end up boxing yourself out and costing yourself possibly an entire move or something, to where you can't get to where you need to go because you've boxed yourself out.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
you really need to be careful with that.
But
And again,
I'm
that's
never
just practice.
careful.
That's just practice.
I'm
But
I'm just a gamer. Don't hate the player, hate the game, Tim. No, yeah, you're right. I think, but that's, I guess, yes. I've been playing so long that maybe that's like a subconscious thing of going, oh
right.
yeah,
It
okay.
becomes a subconscious thing.
Yeah. But
well-
I like both ways. I like what Kyle was saying about like, hey, there's kind of a mind game, like especially like when I was playing the Cassian K2 12 activation list, right? There's a little bit of a mind game of what's going where. Am I gonna, where am I gonna put the pikes? Where am I gonna put Cassian? Like, how am I gonna get this done? But then that is good part of this game, but then I also like the, I don't know, here's everything, good luck
Right.
type of list too. Those are fun.
Well, and if you have anything that has scout, that's always important as well. Because again, maybe you want to hide till later, but it also can get out of your way. So I was playing triple flamers for a while. I finally, they ended up dying eventually. They had a good run up until Golden Sprue, but they had a good run up until then. But like those, I would put them down not first, but pretty early, because once you realize where the bulk of your enemy's core is going, newsflash, that's where my flamers probably want to go as well. And so I put my flamer down, and with the Republic flamers for the flamer RTs have Scout 1. So boom, now I'm out of my deployment zone. But then likewise, I don't want to move over my own guys by accident, and then immediately I'm starting the game with a suppression on them. It's not a good time. So yeah, so I think just depends what you're trying to do, what you're running, but heavies is something you always have to consider, or supports vehicles, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, ground vehicles that take up a footprint.
Right.
Yeah, I always think it's funny when somebody's, it's like an AAT or something, and they're leaving like this very obvious like AAT sized hole right in the front corner in their deployment zone, and like filling the rest of their zone with B1s, and it's like, come on, man. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Well, and like at that point, just throw it down. Like we all know where it's going to go. I mean. If you can, yeah. And because if you don't, and you're trying to be gamey with it, you then do run the risk of maybe like miscalculating by a millimeter, a few millimeters, and now all of a sudden you're, 1B1 squad or whatever has to fall back.
Well, and it strikes me, right? Like, and I think this is where some people get this wrong. The heavy, even if you're playing a single, isn't your secret weapon. It's a distraction, right? Like that's what it is. It's a big like brick wall distraction that says, can you get through this? Because while you're dealing with this, I'm going to be doing all this stuff behind the brick wall, and then you'll have to, you'll be behind.
I think that depends if your heavy has red saves or white saves, because an ATST goes down a lot quicker than an AAT or my sabers.
Sometimes, I mean, it depends. It's got a lot more.
I mean, pending dice luck, sure, but
yeah, and I think
reason
two, when you have two, it's different when you have two versus one, right? So yes,
double
you're
heavy's
absolutely right.
Double heavy is a whole state of mind. It's a whole different game, honestly.
But any armored vehicle in general, you got to be aware too of like your opponent's impact threats, and where they are.
Yeah,
like all vehicles are eminently killable with the right amount of impact threat.
I would even argue impact isn't as much of a thing anymore as critical is the real problem nowadays. Right, like
there's a lot of it.
Triple flamer RT, what were two of my losses at Gold Sprue? Fully loaded Black Sun with a Vigo Magdet in a bus with frag grenades, so surge crit impact 3. So you tell me that there's no impact out there.
Yep. Listen, impact matters.
You played Evan. Evan, I don't.
Not just Evan. I played Dean too.
Oh, right. I don't count Evan in the like conversation about.
Why? He's great.
No. Let me finish. In the conversation about what you can expect to face in the world.
Oh, that's
fair. Like
that's
Evan plays very obscure lists that he's very good at, but it's not something you would face every day. So that's why I'm discounting your Evan match.
I think
Black
we're going to see
a bus is pretty common.
Yeah, it is, and I think we're going to see more impact generally because people are going to be forced to have an answer for Dark Troopers.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you, now that I have played some Dark Trooper games, if you don't have at least impact 6 in your list, and I'm not talking about critical, I'm talking about the impact keyword.
Yeah.
And I mean ranged impact. I'm not counting lightsabers here either.
Well, sure.
If you don't have at least impact 6 at range, you're just going to get absolutely steamrolled. Critical's not enough. It's not reliable enough.
I think critical helps a lot, though. But yeah, I agree.
It definitely helps,
more so,
but it cannot be your only answer.
Sure.
The nice thing about like straight impact weapons versus Dark Troopers is Sorry.
You said a bad word.
Oh, cancel the show.
This is a family podcast. How dare you?
I think that's like the second time I've said it on this episode.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
you've really let loose of
I
your
have. You're right.
professional
I've gotten sloppy over the years. No.
yeah.
Where was I? I forgot. I was talking about Dark Troopers.
Yeah, Dark Troopers. Scary. Bad times. Ooh.
Yeah. Critical is it's
impact.
just it's useful as like a supplement, but it cannot be
Sure.
your primary answer. And the reason that
No.
impact is so good is because they never get cover.
Right.
And they can't really benefit from any other defensive tech either. For the most part, Guardian with Protector being like the only exception, really.
Sure.
So whatever impact value you have, like you're gonna be force and saves with that, guaranteed.
Yeah.
Even something like a DLT, So
running that, running the all armor list I had at LVO, that somehow did better than my Yoda triple RT list at Golden Sprue. It has opened my eyes to just how much I would call it casual impact is running around, like casual impact and even casual critical, because like you said, it's supplemental, but enough critical does add up. And it's hard. Like if you're running white saves, it's rough, but yeah, it's out there. But yeah, you really have to be making sure you have some kind of impact in your list. It's how cheap they are, and with Remnant and everything, I don't hate HH12s somewhere in there nowadays, but cumbersome changes. I don't know. I think they got a lot going for them. But
I've seen people take it on Dark Troopers and Remnant, or not Dark Troopers, Death Troopers.
Death Troopers, yeah, I know what you meant. Yeah. Sure.
I don't know. I can't do it. I still can't do it.
I'm not saying it's good, but I'm saying if you're trying to,
no, that's exactly what you just said. No. You said you think that they're good. That is what you just said.
I said if you're trying to put impact in your list, that is a cheap way to get impact in your list.
I think they're defensible specifically as a Dark Trooper counter.
That's fair.
Because they have that high impact value but low dice count, which means that if you're normally shooting like literally any other armored vehicle, there's a good chance that you're bouncing at least one hit off cover. But if you're shooting Dark Troopers, you're not. You're banking the whole thing. So, yeah,
that's fair.
If you're thinking about specifically like you've gone and made a list and you're like, oh crap, I don't have enough impact in this list to handle Dark Troopers. Maybe I should swap in an HH12. That I could see.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like it's for 16 points, it's easily, I shouldn't say easily, fairly easily placeable in a list where you can just drop something.
I wouldn't say easily.
I said fairly
I would say it's let me put it this way. If you've painted yourself into a corner with bad list building, it's something that you can use as a hedge.
But you probably want to redesign your list at that point. If that's what you're banking on, yeah, sure.
There you go. Sure. If you reach a point where you're like, I don't have enough impact, maybe I should take an HH12. I think you should just be like, you know what? Let's just start over.
No. Tim is saying they're good, so I'm gonna make a Blizzard Force, and I'm gonna put HH12s and DLT 19s. Tim on the podcast said that they're good.
I've seen people take HRUs with HH12s.
Yeah,
and
I've seen it happen.
Yeah. It just makes me. I
snorted there, but yeah, it's good because it gives a good chuckle out of me. But yeah, it's an option you have. How about that?
It is a button that you can click in the list builder.
I still can't get quite behind the DLT these days, just because it's only 2 dice. But if you're throwing a good enough pool, sure. But if you're just shooting a range 4, trying to get that impact through.
Especially now.
Right.
Like it used to be a thing where you're like, yeah, I can line up those, 2 dice, range 4, force 2 shaves.
Sure.
Shots on some real tables. Like nowadays, not a chance.
No, I'd rather bring the RTC and just hope for crits.
Right, exactly. If you're going to be taking those range 4 shots.
Right.
Yeah, 2 red dice, 100% worthless.
You should probably get 2 hits. Congratulations, they're both canceled by cover.
Yep. Here's a suppression token.
Exactly. But not for your vehicle. And not for your Dark Troopers.
Right.
I'm going to take HRUs with T21s and HH12s.
Oh,
Just
buddy, why
get-
that combo?
Get
Why?
all the critical and impact because you said it was good. I'm following your lead here. You said that we could put them in lists now, so that's what I'm doing.
Kyle said it well. They're defensible in some situations.
I think this is one of those situations. I'm gonna make a situation here. And
That
then
would
I'm
be
gonna
a really funny use of an HH-12, just like a
Yeah.
silver bullet anti-armor unit.
Yeah.
Like if you happen to just wander into range 3
Yeah.
of my HRU with an armored unit, congratulations.
Yeah.
Um,
And then I'm
That was
gonna put
terrifying.
2 snow troopers with ions, and then
I saw this over here, and I
oh,
don't know why. I moved my head, and I was like, "Well, I'm about to get murdered on camera." So there you go. That's it. Someone's broken into my
well,
apartment.
there wouldn't be
There you
much
go.
we could do about it either, because I don't actually know where you live.
That's fine. It won't matter soon anyway.
It's like I don't know. He lives
setup.
somewhere. Like,
That's right. Good
what
times, good
happened?
times.
We saw Ghost kill him, as far as
Yes.
I know.
HH-12, man. Someone just rolled up with the HH-12 into his house.
Kyle said to put impact in my list, so I'm doing it.
That's right. That's the Impact Mafia coming for me.
People are going to be taking MPL ions and HH-12s after
Oh.
this episode.
Yeah.
Ooh, don't get me started on Ion.
You're not a member of the Church of Biston?
No, I hate Ion so much. I think the fact that you can bring 2 crappy units, and then if you get the 2 wounds through, you can basically stop my entire 200-point unit from activating. I hate it.
It's a very black and white mechanic.
Yeah, it is.
It's either completely useless in your matchup or it's like game winning.
My first tournament ever, I got my ATST double Ioned, and ever since then, all those years ago, I've always hated Ion. So
Yep,
Ryan is the Church of Viston. I am the Church of Anti-Ion. So there you go.
That's fair.
Our crusades are ongoing.
Yep. All right. Before we get too far off the rails, should we just stop?
Yeah.
Do you guys got any final thoughts on deployment?
Be careful. Be careful.
I would say just be aware of your opponent's threats as they're going down and adjust your plan accordingly.
Yeah.
If your opponent has a bombardment or something, don't put a strike team
true.
where both models are going to be visible from anywhere they can drop it.
True.
Stuff like
And
that.
I'll say too, if they have, I've seen more and more reinforcements out there. If they have reinforcements, try your best to plan for those. I know sometimes it's hard, but I don't know. Just be aware of that.
Yep.
And then now with Dark Troopers too, be aware of that 2-pip. That Dark Trooper can wind up somewhere where it's not very quickly. That can free rapid reinforcements real quick.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Don't let Dark Troopers take rapid reinforcements.
No,
Please,
God no.
people.
God no. Yeah.
Because they can pull their token and then still go that turn.
Yeah.
and
Well, and then they get to do it twice because then they do it on the 2-pip too.
potentially if they have Gideon.
Sure.
But yeah, Dark Troopers at range 2 of your stuff, not something you want. Dark Troopers at range
True.
2 of your stuff, basically for free on the first turn, definitely not something
It's a
you
bad
want.
time. It's
Yeah.
a bad time.
All right. I thought we'd make it through this episode without talking about Dark Troopers, but
Oh no.
apparently not.
What
Um,
if the entire list had either impact or
Swear to God.
ion?
I
Is
knew
that
you were gonna
enough?
say that. I knew you were gonna say that. Shut it down.
It's a thing you can do. I've seen people posting meme lists with droids where they have 6 B1s with the rocket launcher. They've got 3 ion spider droids. They have RPS Magna Guards. And it's yeah, you know what? I think that list would win against Dark Troopers.
Yeah.
You're right. There you go.
All right, so
there
if
you go.
we're gonna land this, but let me give everyone out there the meme list. It's
Okay, let's hear
it's
it.
Blizzard Force, so it's top tier. All right.
Yeah, clearly,
So
clearly that's how that works.
General Veers, 2 HRUs with T21s and HH12s, 2 snow troopers with ion troopers, 4 speeder bikes, and an ATST with an elite armor pilot and the twin light blaster cannon and the grenade launcher.
Do you have points for impact grenades on the snows? Because that would be awesome.
I
True.
bet you I could find some.
Oh my God.
I bet you I could take that elite armor pilot off. Yep, and there it is. Oh yeah, let's add some impact grenades on these guys. And done.
Somebody please take that to Worlds, just so like we
Yeah.
don't actually have to worry about Dark Troopers being a thing. That'd be
That's
great.
right. That's just single-handedly
Just-
take on every Dark Trooper list.
Just gatekeep the Dark Troopers for us, please.
That's right. But not against me, please.
Yeah.
This might actually, it might. I don't know. It might be pretty good.
I mean, it might be just because
No,
it's like
It's ridiculous. It would be good until it wasn't, until you faced just like a gun line that didn't care about any of that stuff.
Yeah. You face like an Iden Bobo gun line or something, and you're like,
yeah.
oh,
I love
right.
the Ion guys in there because like if you just inadvertently face a droid list and they're just like they're just so angry, like they're already hurting, and then you just show up with Ion, like, well, why am I here?
Yep. All right.
Yeah. Anyways,
How about we stop?
Yeah, Jay, let's stop.
All right. We're all in agreement.
All right, sweet. Well, this was deployment and some other stuff. We're the Notorious Scoundrels. I'm Kyle.
I'm Jay.
And I'm Tim, who let Jay go second because that's what I was told to do, or else.
Say fresh cheese bags.